Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to make the protocol and delegate pattern a lot more concrete by implementing it so that our collection view in the match card game project can talk to the view controller and ask that view controller for the information that it needs to display its cells and to let the view controller know when people are scrolling and tapping on the cells and things like that. All right, let's do this. Alright, so now we are looking at the storyboard. The first order of business is to expose our collection view to the view controller so that they can communicate. Right now, we haven't set that up yet. So go ahead, go into Editor, open up the Assistant Editor. On the right hand side, you should be looking at the view controller.swift, and on the left hand side, the storyboard. Now let's make some room right above these other two properties we created. And I'm going to do this from the document outline because we've got quite a number of things on our view here and I don't want to accidentally connect the wrong element. So I'm going to do this from the document outline, hold down Control, click and drag and just insert an IBOutlet property connecting the collection view here. I'm going to call this guy the collection view and add them right there. Now I'm going to go back to single view editor and go to view controller, and now we have a reference. Now we want to set the view controller as the object that is going to be supplying the data to the collection view and also handling the events, the user interaction events from the collection view. And the way we do that is through protocols and delegates, as we've discussed previously. So when you're working with a new UIKit element and you're not sure of what the protocol is to use and how it's going to communicate, we turn to the UIKit documentation. Now, just to jog your memory, the way we can access that is either from here, Window, Developer Documentation, or you can always go on Google and search for the UIKit documentation and use the web-based version, but it's just so much faster to do it from here. Or hold down Option key and then click on the UI collection view, and then just click Open in Developer Documentation. And it's going to jump you straight to that class documentation that we want to figure out. So if you scroll down a little bit, I'm not going to read this to you, but there are some sentences that I want to highlight. The collection view gets its data from the data source object, which we want to be the view controller, which is an object that conforms to the UI collection view data source protocol. Now this is the protocol that we want our view controller to conform to and to handle. Now, in addition to that protocol, there is actually a second one. Usually with these UIKit elements, the protocols are split into, I guess, separate purposes. So this data source protocol is for some object to supply the data that is needed to display in the collection view. The second protocol, if we scroll down a little bit, I don't think it mentions it in the text, if I remember correctly, but the second protocol is this one, managing interactions from the collection view. This one is called the UI collection view delegate protocol. This is the object that acts as the delegate of the collection view. So whatever object conforms to this UI collection view delegate protocol will be the one to receive the events raised by the collection view when the user interacts with it by tapping on the cells. So we want the view controller to conform to both of these protocols, both the delegate one, as you see here on the screen, and also the data source one. So why don't we go ahead and go back to the view controller now and state that it conforms to these two protocols. So here we are in the view controller, and the way we can dictate that they conform to the protocol is just adding a comment here and then just typing the protocol name. So right up off the bat, it comes up UI collection view data source. Let's choose that guy, comma, UI collection view delegate. So now it conforms to those two protocols. The next question you usually ask yourself is, what are the delegate methods that I have to implement in order to properly conform to these two protocols? So the way you can find that out, the way you can look at what methods are available in that protocol is, again, by looking at the documentation. So the easiest way is just to hold down Option or to put your cursor in here and then go into Quick Help and then just open in developer documentation. So it's going to jump you right to the documentation page for that protocol. So right here we're looking at the UI collection view data source. The only problem with this documentation is that sometimes it's not really clear which delegate methods are optional and which ones are required to be implemented in order to conform properly to it. So, you know, you can't really tell here. It doesn't have like a required tag or anything like that. But based on experience, I know which ones are required. And also, Xcode is going to warn you. If you don't have a required method implemented, it's going to let you know and you're not going to be able to run your app. So the easiest way to do this is actually to use that error to your advantage. Now, Xcode helps you greatly here. See, it already has an error here telling you that, hey, you're stating that the view controller class conforms to these two protocols, but I don't see you implementing the required methods. So all you have to do is open up this guy. It's telling you view controller does not conform to that protocol. Do you want to add the protocol stubs? And all you have to do is click fix, and it's going to add some of the empty methods that you have to implement. And now that error goes away and you know exactly which ones are required. So I'm not going to leave them here because it's a little messy. We want to keep the properties at the top, you know, and then the view to load. And so we're going to add these two methods at the bottom. Before I move them though, I want to explain to you what these two methods do and what they are. Both of these methods are actually part of the data source protocol. In the delegate protocol here, there are no required methods. So you're going to see just based on what these methods are responsible for. This one is called collection view, as is this one. But the way you can tell them apart is by this parameter that it's asking for and the return type as well. So this method is the collection view asking the view controller, how many items do you want me to display? So number of items in section. And the reason it says in section is because in a collection view you can have various and different sections, but in our collection view for this app we only have one section. So all we have to do is return the number of items. And lucky for us, we have this handy cards array here. So we can simply return cardsArray.count. That's going to give the collection view the exact number of cards we want to display. So that's what we're going to put right here. Return number of cards. Return keyword cardsArray.count. All right, so this method here, cell for item at index path. So I'm going to explain this in two different parts. First, let me explain what index path is. The index path parameter tells you exactly which cell in the collection view we're talking about. And there are two key pieces of information supplied by the index path. I can actually show you right here. So if we go index path dot, there is a section number. So it specifies what section that cell is in. And then it also has a row number. And even though the terminology is row, think of it as a cell number. So in a collection view, we have different sections. As I mentioned, in this particular app, we only have one section. So we can safely disregard that parameter. But the row property, however, specifies which number of the cell that we are talking about. Is it cell 0? Is it cell 1? Is it cell 2? All the way up to cell 15. Because we actually have 16 cells, but it starts at 0. So it's from 0 to 15, and that's 16 cells. So that would be your row number here. So the index path indicates which cell in the collection view we are targeting. Now this cell for item at index path now makes a little more sense. This method is the collection view's way of asking the data source, which is our view controller, for what cell should I display for this cell number. So for cell 0, what should I show? For cell 1, what should I show? Cell 3, what should I show? And this method is going to fire for every single cell that the collection view needs to show. And this is our opportunity to create that cell, configure how it looks, and then give it to the collection view for display. So as you can see here, we needed to return an integer representing the number of items. Here, we need to return a whole collection view cell object. The collection view is just going to take that cell object and display it. So inside this, we need to get a cell, and then we're going to configure it, and then we're going to return it. So those are kind of the 3 steps that we're going to do inside this method. So first of all, let's get a cell. Now, we could just create a new UI collection view cell, but you know what? We did create a custom subclass of it. So we have this card collection view cell, right? And this is our custom subclass of the UI collection view cell. So we want to be using this custom subclass that we created. Now, I could just create a new card collection view cell object, but I don't want to do that because the collection view actually has a special mechanism that makes it more efficient. Now, if every single time I needed to display a cell, I was creating a brand new cell object, it would be taking up memory every single time I created a new object. However, the collection view actually has a way to recycle cells. So as you're scrolling the collection view and certain cells are out of view, the collection view can detect that and then give you that cell that's out of view for you to repurpose and recycle, essentially. And so you don't need to allocate any new memory, and so you're not going to take up any additional memory. And the way we do that is there's actually a special method of the collection view called dequeueReusableCell. Returns a reusable cell object located by its identifier. And I'll tell you what that identifier is in a second. But essentially what this does is it tries to look for a cell that it can reuse. Maybe it's a cell that we created before that was on screen at one point, but then the user scrolled it off screen. So, you know, for all intents and purposes, the user doesn't even know it exists anymore, but it still exists in memory. So the collection view is going to grab that cell and let you reconfigure it to display. If it doesn't have any reusable cells that it can use, it's going to create a brand new one because there's no other way. So either way, it's going to return a cell for you to use. Now, what type of cell it returns back to you is going to be based on this identifier, which is a string. Now, this identifier was something that we had set back in the storyboard. Remember here, for this particular cell, card cell that we configured, we gave it an identifier called card cell. But if we had, you know, different types of cells, maybe different cell templates, we could give each one a different identifier. And then back here, we would specify the identifier we want to use, depending on which prototype template we want to use. So here I'm going to specify that card cell. And this is where it is very important because capitalization matters. You have to use that identifier that you gave your prototype cell over here. So highlight card cell, look in here under identifier, and it's card cell. It matches what we have right here. And then for index path, we just pass in this index path parameter. So this collection view, this dequeueReusableCell method returns the cell to us, right? Either creating a new one or getting one to be reused, and we have to keep track of that. So I'm going to create a constant called cell, and I'm going to assign that returned cell to this constant called cell. And I'm going to leave configuring it as a to-do item. And then here I'm going to just return that cell. And just like that, we've successfully implemented this method. Even though we haven't configured it, we still are going to see something on the screen because this cell, remember, it has a card back image, right? It looks like this. So we are going to see 16 of those card backs. Now it's a little bit messy to leave these two delegate methods right here at the top of our class. So I'm going to create a special section for them inside our class. And that's going to be down here after the view.load. I'm going to use a special type of comment using this mark keyword. I'm going to do a hyphen, and I'm going to call this collection view delegate methods. And then I am going to take these two methods, I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to paste it right here. So check this out. Using this special mark keyword here, it's basically created a section within my class by drawing a line right here to visually distinguish between that section. And also up here in this breadcrumb, when I click this, I see it's created this line here and this special section heading, collection view delegate methods. So using this special comment can actually help you organize your class, especially when it starts to get a little larger. You might have noticed, in addition to that, that it says configure it right here, and that is actually my to-do right here. So this to-do is actually another special keyword that you can use with comments just to remind yourself. So when you pull down this breadcrumb, you can see like, oh, I need to do that, I need to finish that. Maybe finish configuring the cell or something like that. And then here, you are going to see that to-do item. So just before we run the app to see if we can see the 16 cards, there's actually one last thing that we have to do, and beginners oftentimes forget this. I sometimes even forget this, and that is to actually set the view controller object as the delegate and as the data source of the collection view. Because it's one thing to say that the view controller conforms to the protocols and then implement the required methods, but it's an entirely separate thing to actually indicate that the view controller object is the data source and is the delegate for the collection view. So why don't we go ahead and do that down here in the view.load. Set the view controller as the data source and delegate of the collection view. So the way we do that is through the properties data source of the collection view. So we're going to set that to self, which is the view controller itself. And the second one is the collection view dot delegate is equal to self. And just like that, when the collection view needs to display the data, it's going to ask its data source, which we've indicated is the view controller, how many items do I need to display? Handy for us, we've implemented that method here. So it's going to return the card array.count. And then knowing how many items there are, the collection view then is going to start asking its data source, what do I display for item number 1? What do I display for item number 2? So on and so forth. And so that's going to fire this method right here for each of those items that it needs to display. And then we get a chance to create a cell for it and configure it and then return that cell for display. And then in terms of the delegate right here, when the user taps on a cell, the collection view is going to talk to its delegate, which we've set to the view controller, and tell the delegate, hey, somebody's tapped on the cell. Do you want to handle it? Right now, we haven't actually implemented the method for handling that event because it's optional. We can still run the app not having implemented it yet, but we will do so in the future. And yes, okay, so let's go ahead and run this project right now and take a look at what we see. So this is what you should get as well. You should get, you might not get 4 cards in a row. This just depends on your screen size, and the spacing might be a little different, but what I want to make sure that you get are 16 cards in your display, because that's how many cards the card model is returning. If you don't see anything at all, the things that I would check is that A, you've set the view controller as the data source, most important, and that B, here you are returning card array.count, and that you are also creating the cell and returning the cell. Now, if you're still not seeing anything, then I would double check that there are 16 cards inside this array. You might even just want to return 16 like that. But doing that will actually cheat a little bit because it's going to call this 16 times and this just shows you the card back. If you put in this and you find out that card array.count is actually 0, then that's going to be a problem. So that means there's something wrong in this line right here where the model isn't returning the right number of cards into your cards array. And in a couple of lessons later, I'm going to tell you exactly how to troubleshoot these issues. So hang in there. We're going to get to that soon, and it's going to be mind-blowing when you know how to fix your own problems. Now in this lesson, we implemented the protocol and delegate pattern by having the view controller assign itself as the delegate in the data source of the collection view. And in order to do that, our view controller also had to conform to the appropriate protocols and implement those protocol and delegate methods. Now, a cool thing that you can do that we haven't covered yet is that you can create your own custom protocol. And this is something that we're going to do later on. It's a little bit too complicated for where we're at right now, but I just want you to understand how the collection view uses the protocol and delegate pattern to communicate and get information from its delegate and data source, which is our view controller. So if you understood all of that and what was going on in this lesson, then that's a huge win because this is a oftentimes big stumbling block for beginners. All right, great progress. I'll see you in the next lesson.